Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back with more True Detective, Madman Edition. So, we are at episode 5, and we are getting into some real shit. I know the end to the last episode was dramatic enough with the epic gunfight, but this episode, again, it's something I said in the last recording. The gunfight in the last episode, I think, is actually more intense than this one. But there's a reason for that in the narrative, so I guess, it sort of justifies its own, what would you call it? It's lacklusterness. This episode is, it's pivotal to the plot because it establishes how good these characters are at lying, which again is sort of an essential practice in life. It doesn't really matter which culture you're a part of. It doesn't matter if you're, if you washed up on the shores of the West or the East. It's the same grift. It's really just the manner in which it's performed. Again, I'm not trying to be a cynic or sort of depress people by saying, like, you have to lie to exist. Like, everybody knows that, but this show, it directly confronts that kind of problem in society. Because the villains in the show are like, well, the truth is that it's all just blood and sex and blah, 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 evil shit. But that in and of itself is just another narrative. It's just what they're trying to sell to justify their actions. And the creepy thing about this series is that it says, well, everybody has to do that, even if you're a good person. You still have to sell your goodness as a kind of narrative. It doesn't matter if it's a capitalist society you're in or some kind of other variation of social organization. You still have to somehow promote or sell or convince others to adhere to whatever your opinions are or the opinions of whatever group you're a part of. That's eternal. That will never go away. When it does go away, things get really bad. Like you get totalitarianism, because if the random average person or the random average group of people don't have access to any sort of ability or agency to promote their viewpoint, that means that the overarching society has prevented that. Anyway, this is the creepy cook's liaison. Here we have Marty and his fake prisoner. And he's told this guy to just say whatever the fuck, oh, I got beaten up playing pool, And Marty's kind of underestimating, or Rust, excuse me, I get the two confused. Rust is underestimating this guy. He's like, I'm selling him a narrative like we're in the interrogation booth here. And Ginger is not acting good enough. He comes across like he's saying what he's been told to say. And this creepy meth cook guy can smell it. He's like, this guy's been coached to say this. He looks back and forth between the two, and he's like, fuck no. This is a grift, you guys. And he's trying to tempt him with money, and then he says, you're fucked, man. You are a failed Jesus clone, and you've got some serious baggage as a result of that. You have some bad juju about you. And this is coming from a insanely evil fuck. And even this dude is like, I'm not touching you, man. It's not that you're good or evil. You're just fucking volatile. You're just dangerous. This guy makes meth for a living. The chemistry of that can kill you if you make an incorrect measurement. And he's looking at Russ. Look how uncomfortable Russ looks here. He fucking sniffs. God damn. When an evil, dark, wizard, demonic dude looks at you and goes, fuck you, man, I'm not dealing with you, that should be a bad sign. It should be a bad sign no matter what your alignment is, no matter what, Baldur's Gate D&D alignment you've picked in your life. If a character from one end of the spectrum or the other says, you're too chaotic, I'm not even going to touch you, that's a bad sign universally, you know? That's some pretty serious shit. That's a sign you got to get your shit together, whoever you are, whatever you are. But anyway, going back to the plot of the actual show, the actual episode, they are tailing this guy. Rust is fucking peeling out in an old F-150. He's got this Nordic dude tied up in the back, muzzled. Very topical. Then we cut forward to the future. And Rust is bullshitting them. He's like, one of my old CIs told me where the meth lab was. It was a very convenient Deus Ex Machina situation. I just randomly stumbled across the right information. I didn't have to tie anybody up or circumvent dozens of laws or behave like a psycho. It just happened serendipitously like that. And the younger guy, he's like, why do you want to see our files about the case? And he's like, well, why don't you want to show them to me then? You know? Have I not come across as a totally sane individual? Why wouldn't you want to show me your files? You know? He's testing how desperate they are. That's the whole performance in this. He's intentionally showing off his real degradation, which he could have hid. He could have shaved his mustache, cut his hair, put on a suit, and come across as a professional. But he didn't do that in the future scene that we just saw. He said, I'm going to be who I really am. But even by doing that, even by telling the truth, he's still fucking with them. Because he's like, I want to test how desperate these detectives are about this case. If they won't show me their shit, it means they think I'm a suspect. And he's not sure, because he's had no contact with the police force for, over a decade. So the future version of Rust is testing the two black guys by saying, how desperate are you guys to solve this case? How close are you to actually making progress? Have you uncovered even a shred of what I have? And spoiler alert, it turns out they haven't. They really are desperate. Because even though he comes across as a drunk psycho, intentionally, they're reticent to show him the files, but they do. Even though they think he's a suspect, they show a potential suspect information about the case, which is insane. It means that they're grasping at straws. They're desperate. So, they track the meth cook's little sidekick to this backwoods-ass place. And now we cut to the interrogation of Marty. It's a sort of professional, kind of respectful interrogation, because these guys are former cops. They can't just throw them in a cell. They've got to do this. And so Marty's like, there's only one fake story, and both Rust and I were totally on the same page about the fake story. All that matters when you're crafting a lie is consistency. That's why lies among small groups are always better. Whereas lies for big groups of people, they tend to fall apart because they lose consistency. Consistency's all that matters. Rust and I, we came up with this bullshit together. And because of that, it's gonna fucking trick your ass. So Rust said something earlier about hunting, and he made fun of Marty. He was like, I'm not talking about using a vial of female deer piss to attract somebody. I'm talking about becoming a fucking predator. You have to become a cat. You got to really wake up your cat brain and throw some cold water on the toxoplasm parasites in your brain and get them to give you their occult insight into how to be a fucking stealth predator. They avoided a grenade trap just now. They're walking across this Apocalypse Now ass fucking plywood bridge in this backwoods shithole. Again, the house in the distance there, it looks like two eyes with a bit of, hair on top. That dark gray vertical part of the house looks like a face. That's intentional. It's very well done. There's a lot of creepy little nods in this. If you've seen the movie Midsummer, they get way more explicit with that because the characters are all supposed to be hallucinating, and it's a bit corny. In this, it's not, because Rust is not experiencing some sort of drug flashback in this particular scene, but we as viewers get to sort of, we're shown these shapes and these images that in the context of this movie, which is about creepy people and drugs and weird shit, they clearly picked this house intentionally because it looks like a creepy face staring out of the woods at you. And so they've got these epic shipping containers, like the kind used for human trafficking. Isn't that interesting? And Rust is like, all right, Marty, stay back here. I will steal all the glory for myself. That's not what he's saying. And again, this is all bullshit. It's all bullshit. But despite the fact that these two guys got interviewed separately on the same fucking day, or very close to that, the narrative's not specific, but the implication is that Rust and Marty in the future were interviewed, if not on the same day, like very close to one another. And yet they kept their narrative consistent because at some point in the past they agreed, well, this is going to be the story. And then we get to see the reality. Their voiceover is telling a totally different story. And here we see what really happened. What really happened was, in order to not die, they had to be subtle. They had to use feminine, indirect, stealthy, cat-like tactics to not die, to actually catch the guy. If they'd summoned in state troopers, like some sort of Call of Duty, satellite helicopter aid call, it would have fucked the whole operation up, because these guys are used to hiding in the woods, obviously. They've got one of those creepy triangle sculptures on an oil barrel as we pan in here. My point is that there was a line earlier where they were like, well, Rust was like, we can't just summon this fucking state troopers. That'd be a nightmare. It'd be a mess. These guys would just run away like rats. We have to be cats here. We can't do an epic drone strike on them. We have to be a little bit more subtle, even if it's outside the purview of our cop regulations and laws and etc. Right? If we want to actually catch these fucks, we can't follow the rules. Which is what makes this series great. Any great cop or detective drama has people bending the rules. And this guy's got a very epic Satan tattoo. Oh, yes. He's got a noose around his head and a epic Buddhist symbol on his left pectoral muscle. Oh, what could that symbol mean? He's got 666. It sucks for me personally watching this without the music, because the music in this is great. It really sets the scene, for real. It's well done. And this guy's so cooked. He's like, Black Star, it's a reference to Robert W. Chambers' book, The King in Yellow, from the late 19th century, which is also a huge influence on this show. It's a weird book, man. It's a series of short stories that are kind of science fiction, but also not really. They're kind of gothic fantasy. It's from that weird transitory period where gothic fantasy sort of became science fiction. It's kind of in between. Robert W. Chambers' stuff is not easy to read. I haven't finished that book. I've read about half of it. Enough to get a few of the references in this. But it's not an easy read. It's written in a very obtuse, dusty, clogged up kind of prose that makes it not easy to digest. If you weren't born in 1850. So, they've separated. Not a good idea. Marty has gone looking for the kids or looking for something. It's like, maybe kill the two guys first before separating. Like Scooby-Doo, these idiots have separated. And he's like, you're in Carcosa, blah, blah, blah. That's a direct reference to Robert W. Chambers' book, The King in Yellow. Have you read it? Rust's like, yeah, I read it 6 times, motherfucker. That's how I was able to psychically find you, you piece of shit. And I don't think we ever see what Marty actually finds. He says, time is a flat circle. He's like, shut the fuck up, Nietzsche. He's talking about the black star. What could that be? A black hole? Some star in the interior of the hollow earth? Whatever. Now, we don't see what Marty saw, but his actions kind of speak for themselves. He comes out of seeing what he saw and goes, this guy just needs to die. What I just saw justifies me just killing him. And then this moron, he runs into a fucking landmine that he set up while he was cocked out of his mind on fucking meth, and he fucking forgot it was there. Or, alternate interpretation, he knew the mine was there, and he wanted to die. He's like, I'd rather kill myself by running into my own mine. So whatever happened, they're both dead. And again, this narrative is all total bullshit. But how did they get away with it? We know how they're getting away with it in the future, because they're so confident about the narrative that they're just bullshitting these cops. But then in the past, it's like, how did they cover up what happened? It's kind of like in the Burnt Orange Heresy. There's a scene with... there's a scene in my review of that movie, which you should watch and like and subscribe. There's a scene where there's a conversation that happens between a character and an older character and a younger one. And the older character is talking about a lie. I'm not going to get specific. But the older character says, we had to tell this lie. It was necessary. We had to exaggerate, or our society would have collapsed. And the younger character goes, she's kind of incredulous. She's like, how could you do that? And he's like, well, we had to. There was no other way to do it. And this scene is making reference to that same type of situation, where there are times in history where the entire future of your people, your country, your race, your in some cases all of humanity, is dependent upon a linchpin lie. And if that lie gets torn down at the wrong time or in the wrong way, everybody suffers. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the edgelord, truth-obsessed people like me who just want to see the lie die because I'm sick of it. And it's not good for the people who want to support it at any cost. And it's not good for the NPCs or normies or random competent people in between things. It's not good for anybody if it collapses at the wrong time or in the wrong way. And that's what this show is implying. It's implying the same thing about the same historical event, which I'm not even going to specify. Those of you who have half a brain will know what I'm talking about. But Rust is now being interrogated by this sort of Nuremberg-esque committee. Not that that's what I'm referring to. But he's having to demonstrate to them that he's crafted a sufficient explanation that is fake, but more palatable for what actually had to happen, for what actually had to be done to save some people and to catch some villains. What actually had to be done was way more subtle and creepy and indirect and covert and stealthy and heinous than the braggadocious fireworks show meme Disneyland ride that got entered into the annals of history. What actually had to be done was a lot darker. If you're interested in this type of shit, I'm going to plug another short story for you. There's a story called A Colder War by a guy named Charles Stross, who has also written other stories involving the ice wall and an infinite flat plane interpretation of Earth. Very weird, creepy, insane shit. His writing is generally very good, but this story I'm talking about, A Colder War, is a reinterpretation of the events of the Cold War that directly acts as a sequel to The Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. And again, the reason I'm mentioning this is this series is directly summoning up these themes from these authors. And Charles Stross, my God, if there could ever be an adaptation of A Colder War, I would do anything to be involved in that. I would do almost anything. That's in like my top 3 things that I would love to have some involvement in if there's ever an adaptation of Charles Stross's short story A Colder War, which you can read online for free if you just search it on whatever your preferred search engine is. The reason I bring it up again is it's a lot similar to this. It talks about the surface level narratives of things, not in a cynical way as if to wantonly dismiss their value. It says they're necessary, but here's what's underneath. Here's the truth. So then we cut here. Let's rubber band back to the show for a sec. This is a very dramatic and pivotal scene for Marty, for his character, where he's gone to this roller rink, this epic Vampiroteuthis Infernalis light show, ice, bottom of the sea type of thing. And he's talking about forgiveness. He's like, to be forgiven, I had to remind my wife that I'm a badass. That's the cynical way to interpret this. He basically says the lie of our heroism kind of saved my marriage for a bit. You can say it's cynical, but it's the truth. And this show is brutal about its characters. Its characters are aware of this, and they're not just aware of it, they don't just tell you through subtext, they straight up say it in the dialogue. It's unprecedented to me in a lot of ways. There's very few things I can point to. Literature, plays, Shakespeare is one of the few. Hamlet is one that I can point to where the characters straight up tell you what's going on in a way that's shocking if you have half a brain. This show is another one where it's like they're straight up admitting the value of lies in a way that is brutal. And, Marty's not fucking with her in this scene. He's like, I really am trying not to be a drunken idiot. He's like, I actually do have some increased awareness of how much I fucked up. But again, how much is he performing? How much is she performing? Is she just turned on by the fact that he's now a hero cop and she's covering that up? We don't know. Maybe neither of them know themselves personally. Again, their bodies are acting before their minds convince them that they've been the source of those actions. I talked about this in the last episode. Our bodies are the reactions of our nerves. Rust drinking that cup of coffee. There, he's being very gracious in this scene by summoning up my earlier point. When you pick up a cup of coffee and drink it, your body does that on its own because of a set of impulses that have been established by your conditioning and habits that you grew up with since you were a child. You saw your dad drinking coffee when you were 3, so you want to drink coffee not because of the benefits of the substance or the action socially. It's because you just mimicked it. Your ape brain mimicked it. In retrospect, your brain is perpetually in retrospect. That's the way to put it. It's hard to describe this shit I'm not a fucking scientist. But your brain is perpetually justifying the actions of your body in retrospect. There's how to say it. So, this show touches on this because Rust is saying here, everybody's guilty. What are we guilty of? Well, we're guilty because we aren't fully in control of our bodies. Our bodies act without our input. It's impossible, actually, to fully control your impulses. All you can do is sort of bend or steer your psyche or yourself towards better habits. And that's very difficult. If you're predisposed to resist that, you might be destined to slip into hell, you know. And that's what Marty's talking about here. He's like, I didn't know how good I had it. When my daughters were young and I was a hero cop, my marriage was saved. And he says, I cleaned up. I cleansed myself. But I didn't change. I didn't fundamentally change. And then we have his daughter talking to his other daughter saying, give it back. It's like, give me back that moment in my youth. From Marty's point of view, he's like, give me back those good times. Let me live in innocence. And I don't think he's performing for the detectives in this. He could be. It's a potential interpretation, is he's being dramatic for the sake of the interrogation session with these two black guys. But I don't think that's the case in this scene. I think he's being genuine. I think he's using this as an excuse to sort of talk to himself. Because again, the session means nothing. He's not a suspect. He's been distanced from Rust for years in the future timeline, right? So he has no reason to be unnecessarily dramatic. He's not putting on a show. And he never really was like Rust. He was never really, you know, a performer in the same sense. And I love that we get this fake out where there's these two little cheerleaders that are all sort of clean cut, and then we realize, oh, those aren't Marty's daughters. It's this chick. It's this fucking Avril Lavigne emo chick from 2002. And so now they're really grilling these guys. They're humiliating them. It's a humiliation ritual. That's become a meme lately, which I think is fucking great. It should be a meme. Everybody should know about that. It should be open. Shouldn't be a secret. The whole fucking John Cena thing. But anyway, that's irrelevant. The point is that Marty's admission of his failure as a father is sort of, it's a Western guilt/shame based type of mechanism. And it's fucking tiring at this point, you know. Both in the context of the show and in the context of reality, it's kind of exhausting. It's exhausting and exhausted. It's like car exhaust. It's been blown out. It's finished. It needs to be replaced with something else. Should it be replaced with a Confucian give people exams until they kill themselves from stress system? No, I don't think that's true. Should it be replaced with a shamanistic do drugs until you go insane system? And if you pass the test, then you're fine? I don't think that's a good idea either. It's almost like it should be a combination of the best aspects of several systems, which is going to take a hell of a lot more effort to figure out, and there's no easy, fast answer to it. But pure humiliation, just like pure Confucian testing or pure shamanistic drug rape, none of those systems are sufficient on their own, because they're all extremes. They all suck. They don't work for everybody. And so now, let's rubber band back to the show for a sec. They set Rust up with this chick who seemed perfect for him. You know, she's this sort of psychiatrist, psychologist chick. She's very intelligent. You know, she understands him. And Rust fucked it up. That's the implication with that last little scene. And then we cut again. Because Marty's being grilled, his memories are all jumbled up, and he's recalling all these important moments from his life. And again, we're sort of privy to his mental shuffling of his own past. And his daughter has done something fucked up. He's brought her home. It's like, you're not Avril Lavigne. You're not going to have a music career. Stop fantasizing and fucking tons of guys. That's fucking... You're just going to get an STI. So basically she was fucking random guys. That's the scene. And so Marty here is flexing. He's like, I'm your daddy. I control who you fuck. Creepy shit. Not that he should let his daughter be a whore, but he goes too far in the other direction in this scene. He's like, I am your male authority. I control everything you do. Your pussy only bleeds when I say it should. Like, he's being that retarded in this scene. Captain of the varsity slut team. That's a little bit of Rust female insulting. He really digs at her. But he doesn't know how to use the female power. When she goes back at him with a male response where she says, fuck you, which is a very masculine thing to do, he responds like a man. And he fucking slaps her. Slaps his own daughter in the face. Moron. Lack of control. Stupid. Ape brain. Idiot. But that's Marty. That's his flaw. That's his weakness. But even in the crucible of that weakness, like, you can see he's learned from Rust. Like, he's trying, whether he knows it or not, I think he's picked up some of Rust's sort of female sensitivity, but he doesn't know how to use it. It's like giving a monkey a grenade. It's like he doesn't really know how to keep himself balanced. He's too volatile. He doesn't get it. And now, speaking of brains, thank you, Rust, for conforming to my commentary. He's talking about our perception of time. And he says, there's something called M-brain theory, which I'm not going to talk about here. Basically, he says we only perceive time in one direction. That's true. We have memories, but that's not real access to the past. It is an imprint of the past. He says if there are beings above us that can perceive time in both directions, which wouldn't be hard to do. You know, there might be beings 4 levels above them, you know. You only have to go 1 level up. It's not that far. He talks about this creepy theory where if you're trapped in one mode of perception, I want to talk about this more metaphorically, because he's talking about it literally for the purposes of the show. He's saying, we're in one dimension and we're trapped here, blah, blah, blah. What if your perception could give you access to other dimensions just by virtue of committing to seeing things a different way? What Rust is talking about in this scene is more about perception. It's not about literal, like, 12th dimension traveling through gates type of shit. He's saying if you think about your life and time in only one way, and you only see it in one type of way, you're only going to move in one direction. If you obsess about the past, you're going to live in the past. If you obsess about the future, you're going to live in the future. If you obsess about the present, you won't have any insight into how to improve your life from the past or from your hopes about the future. This is a shitty way to put this. This is hard to talk about in an off-the-cuff way, especially. I sound like a fucking idiot. But Russ talks about, you know, the sort of Buddhist Eastern philosophy cyclical interpretation of existence, where he says you're going to be reborn into the same life over and over again forever. And that's his sort of nihilistic edit of the actual religious interpretation of reincarnation. And there's a bunch of them. None of them are just, you're going to live the same life forever. That's Rust's personal cynical bullshit, where he's like, I'm trapped in the same drug-induced self-hypnosis forever. That's just how he feels. That's how he feels in this life. Like, he's applying that to the entire cosmology that he's read about from various texts. His character is distorting what religious insights he's been able to glean from his research according to his own personal crap. And he doesn't realize that till literally the last 5 minutes of the last episode of this. And the way he realizes it is bad. I gotta say, the ending to this, the last 5 minutes of this, suck ass. They flubbed the ending. a lot like Stephen King does with his books. He'll get literally like 98% of the way through the book and it'll be great, apart from his prose being a bit rudimentary. But then at the last second, it's like he's about to score the touchdown that will save the game, and he just shoves the ball up his own ass. He just throws it into the crowd. He just fucks it up. They did that with this series, which pisses me off. But anyway, I'm talking over the scene because it's not very interesting. It's a guy who's committed a crime. Rust is doing his trademark interrogation. This guy killed some people to get some fent or something. You know, he was robbing a pharmacy. And so Rust is tricking him. He's saying, I'm going to do what I've done 100 times, 1,000 times. I'm going to trick you into confessing. It's nothing new for Rust. But in this scene, it's a little bit darker because this guy killed 2 people. And he's really swindling him. He's really giving him real hope that if he confesses, he's not going to get killed. And he's going a little bit far even for him. He's getting a bit too dark. This scene is kind of a turning point for Rust because it's not just that he manipulates this guy a little too creepily. He's a little too evil. It's that he also loses his cool for the first time in the interrogation. Because there's a part of him, you can see it in his face right here at about 36 minutes, 27 seconds. He's kind of disgusted by his own process. He's sick of it. He's sick of manipulating people with lies. He's sick with himself. And when this guy tempts him with what he knows, that's what drives him over the edge. He's already tired. He's already feeling jaded about his own process. And this guy goes, well, what if I tell you some cult knowledge about Robert W. Chambers and his book, The Yellow King, published in 18-something. It's like 1885 or something. If you want to read that book, by the way, facsimiles of it are very cheap. The originals are like $1,000, but you can get facsimiles printed in India for like $50. They're not bad. I got one and there were a few loose pages, but for the most part, they're pretty good facsimiles. And Rust's like, you don't know anything. You're just fucking with me. And he's like, no, dude. I do know some shit. This is like the cop that interrogated fucking Anthony Weiner. This guy's Anthony Weiner. It's like, I know you got frazzle drip on your laptop, you little worm. I'm gonna fucking kill you. Not if I tell you about Robert W. Chambers. That will save me if I mention him. Rust gets violent right away. He's becoming Marty in this scene. A lot like in the previous scene with Marty's where he slaps his daughter. It's not the slap for Marty that was the change. It was him saying, you're captain of the varsity slut team. That's a feminine insult. So that was him breaching his preferred mode of behavior. And in this scene, Rust is becoming a little bit more like Marty. It's the reverse. He slaps this guy. That's not really something we've seen Rust do up till this point. It's like Rust and Marty are rubbing off on each other. They've been partners for so long, they're starting to rub off on each other, not only in good ways, but in bad ways. They're catching each other's bad habits, and they don't know it. Rust doesn't know it, Marty doesn't know it. And that's so subtle, man. Like, I know I'm gushing about this shit, but you gotta understand, so few series that are character studies, whether they're dramas or you know, thrillers or action movies or whatever, so few things bother to be that subtle about how they develop the characters. Because when you develop characters right, you actually give a shit about what happens to them. And these people are so fucking real that if you've ever had a job where you've worked with the same people for 10 years, you know, you pick up their habits without knowing it. And then maybe you never notice it, but maybe you do. Maybe you're like, man, I never liked egg salad sandwiches, but Beth, who works in the cubicle next to me, she kept eating them for 10 years, and then I started eating them. And then I realized it. And it's creepy because you didn't even know you were doing it. It's like your body was doing it before you knew that it was doing it. It's like your body was behaving like a body. And your conscious mind took some time to catch up. So again, rubber banding back to the movie, we're going back to the episode. We're back in the future, and basically, Rust is like, you're trapped. You're living the same life that's being redressed. Maybe this same story took place in ancient Mesopotamia. Just replace the computers with clay tablets, and the suits and ties with robes, and the buildings with clay buildings, you know? Maybe it's the same shit over and over until you figure out how to break out and achieve samsara. And if you have diarrhea for 40 years, you will finally be cleansed. Eat tree bark and mummify yourself and ring a little bell in your grave. Then you will finally escape. It's all bullshit. But that's the point. Is the future version of Rust is so tired of seeing the same shit. What he's doing is he's saying, I've seen so much evil, and it's always the same. It's always people doing the same shit. That I think all of existence is like this. That's a terrible distortion of reality that he's fallen prey to here. He thinks that everyone's doomed to be him. He's so up his own ass, and he's not even aware of it, that he thinks that his version of existence is the same for everyone. To the point where he develops a pseudo philosophy based on it. He's so depressed that he's like, well, if I'm this depressed, I'm so profoundly depressed, I'm so genius in my depression, everybody must also be like me. And reality, in fact, must conform to my depression. The irony is this guy who made the point of saying, well, humans looked at the sun and we thought it was here for us specifically. He's doing that with his own depression. He's saying, I'm so jaded about reality that I'm going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy and I'm going to believe it. And I'm not even aware I'm doing it. He's not even aware that he's created a vision of reality and hypnotized himself into believing it, to the point where he's infecting other people with it. He's talking to Marty about it. You know, in episode 1 or 2, Marty says, don't talk to my kids about this shit. You're infected with something. You've got some kind of mind virus. Don't fucking spread it. You know? I mean, this is real shit. People right now are infected with all sorts of ideas like this guy. Ideas are the real viruses, man. You know, you can have an illness, this physical, that's very serious, and it can kill you, and it can infect your loved ones and your friends and kill them, whatever. Mind viruses are 1,000 times worse than physical shit because they don't kill you. They don't give you the relief of death. They turn you into a fungal drone that spreads bad shit. And you won't even be aware that you're doing it. And you'll live. You'll keep going. You'll keep spreading it without knowing it. You'll watch everybody around you be negatively affected. And you won't even know why. It's like maybe the problem is you. Maybe you got to sort out your shit. And again, you know, that's what Rust is dealing with throughout this entire narrative. Even the old version of him, he's still dealing with this shit. And it's not as if he's not fighting good battles. It's not as if he's not making progress and helping people. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that he's still unaware of what his real issue is, which is that he has hypnotized himself into being a total Nietzschean, edgy cynic. And that's a disservice to Nietzsche, because Nietzsche was not a cynic. He was not a nihilist. Quite the opposite. He was simply identifying the existential problems that were arising during his time and saying we need to figure out how to respond to this. That's what he was really saying. If you actually read what he said, he's not saying let's all be nihilists. He's saying if we don't figure out a solution, then we're going to collapse, right? As a society in the West. That's what he was really saying. Now, let's rubber band back to this again. These detectives are like, you know, we're kind of trying to finger Rust here. So here's our file. And finally, Marty's like, fuck you. Like, I don't believe that. You know, Rust was nuts. He was weird. But he's not, you know, I can't lie to you anymore. Basically, Marty's like, fuck this whole charade. I'm just not going to say anything to you. Like, it's if you're just trying to extract quotes from me that you can use to besmirch Rust or try to frame him or whatever, I'm not even going to be a part of it. So like in THX 1138, he sort of runs away from the guards and busts his way out of the underground bunker, you know. This is interesting too, this sculpture of sticks at about 46 minutes, 18 seconds. There's a landscape artist, which I didn't know was a thing until a few years ago. A landscape artist was hired to create these stick sculptures for this season. You can look them up. I don't remember their name. But a friend of mine pointed that out. He was like, check out the artist who made these things. It's worth doing that. And it's great because now we finally get the reveal that they talked to Marty second. And he goes, you guys are idiots. If you even invited him in here, it'd be like inviting a human camera and hard drive into your little nest. And he extracted from you 100 times what you think you extracted from him. He observed and he recorded. And then we cut back to the slightly earlier interview with Russ, and he goes, you guys are pathetic. I knew all this. And Rust is being honest here. He's like, I actually do want to help you guys, because I just want to solve this fucking case. I don't care who I have to collaborate with. I want the truth. I want to solve this. And he goes, I've been pretty patient with you fucks. And the young guy loses his cool. His supervisor's like, Drone 362, this is Drone 363. Please exit the domicile and report for reprogramming. He goes, yes, master. I will be reprogrammed now by you. Boop, boop, boop. And here we have Rust investigating this creepy building. All these vines. These are the scenes that they're just visual candy. I mean, this is just great. This is like Stalker. If you haven't seen my Stalker review, you should. This reminds me very much of Stalker. It's directly referencing or summoning up the same sort of visual style and setting of Tarkovsky's films. And so they're saying, all right, bro, you want us to know why we're looking at you? Because you're haunting these crime scenes and you're basically parading yourself as a potential suspect. Because you're in these photos. And it's almost like they might be giving him a break. They might be saying, look, dude, our superiors are pressuring us to frame you. And in the first few times I watched this series, I thought, oh, these guys are evil. They're trying to frame him. This time, it's like maybe they're actually very subtly trying to warn them. They're saying, you guys, you old cops, you're being framed because we can't find the guy who's doing this. Our superior, who we don't see who the new police chief is. We never see it. In 2015 or whatever, we never see who their boss is. That's creepy to me, that they never even show him. Who knows who it is? But these two black cops are like, listen, Whitey, you're the new patsy. You're the new scapegoat. You're going to be framed for this shit unless you can find who really did it. But they're being pretty brutal to him. They're saying, look, man, you really look like a potential suspect here. You really got to sort this shit out. It's almost like they're nudging them to solve the case. Maybe they're secret hidden angels. Maybe they're like the random beggar, the old man, or the random character who actually is an angel in disguise, saying to Rust and to Marty, you guys need to amp up and you need to solve this shit, because if you don't, we're just going to pin you for it. You know, we need to put somebody away for this. It's been too long. Too many people have died. We look like fools. Our entire organization looks like fools. If we don't find a patsy for this, we're just going to make one, you know? And finally, Rust is like, okay, I've extracted all the information I can from you, and you're now fucking with me, so we have nothing more to offer each other, so I will now leave. And it reminds me of the scene with Marty's wife, where he's like in the diner, and she says something to him that's like, okay, the conversation's over. There's nothing we can extract from each other. There's no benefit from the further communication. I just have to remove myself from the situation. So he does. Out of just even sheer self-preservation, he's like, I just got to be out of here. We're done, you know. Oh, God, the child angel. Oh, Christ. God, I don't remember this scene. Fuck me. Bleeding eyes, bleeding mouths. Some John Podesta paintings on the wall. Fucking Christ save us. And so again, Marty hasn't had any contact with him. And he's like, well, Rust was never like a drunk. And they're like, dude, you need to reconnect with your partner. Again, it's like they're giving him a tiny warning. Like 98% of what they're saying is they're just trying to frame him. But there's a 2% grain in their speech, in what they're saying, in the subtext of it, where they're like, if you guys can do this, do it now. Like, this is your last chance. You've really got to reconnect with your bro. You've got to solve this case. If you don't, you're fucked. You know? Maybe they're not even warning him consciously. Could be subconscious. And again, I wouldn't be getting this kind of deep into subtext and, you know, paranoid type interpretations of dialogue. This series directly summons this type of thing up. It provokes the viewer to really worm into the dialogue and be like, who's saying what to who, and blah, blah, blah. I don't do this for every series I watch. Really, it's just this. There's a few movies that kind of tickle me into thinking this way, but this is the primary one. This one is, there's little kid dolls in that. If you didn't notice, it's very quick. That little triangle sculpture there, it had little voodoo dolls in it of children. Kids trapped in a triangle. What could that mean? It's only that shot. You don't see the little voodoo dolls in the other sculptures. It's just the one on the desk, little school desk. It's like gate program kids Who knows what that shit's really about? I went through that shit myself. I have no fucking idea what that was about. You can't get any coherent information about that shit. Or if you do, it's, who the fuck knows? Oh, we're just making sure, we're just looking for smart kids. Oh, is that it? Okay, cool. I'm sure that's all it is. I'm sure there's no nefarious intent behind it. And he's like, someone came back here. The implication at this scene is somebody kept coming back to this creepy abandoned school and kept making these things. Somebody was traumatized here and kept coming back to the memory of this place and leaving behind little totems to try to cope. Some diseased mind couldn't let go of this space, this place. They're drawing stars, black stars on the windows, on the broken glass. Holy shit. Whew, boy. Well, guys, that was an intense episode. Prompted me to rant a whole bunch. Don't worry about me. I'm cool. I just like this series. This series is wild. This series is nuts. This series will jog your brain, no matter who you are. It'll jog it in one way or another, which is why it's so great. It's very widely applicable to different personality types and people who've had different experiences and people who are prone to interpreting things in very different ways. That's why it's well done. That's why it's a masterpiece, in my opinion. So, I hope you enjoyed the commentary for episode 5. Stay tuned, because I'm going to try to blaze through the end of this series. I was going to do some other shit. I was going to play some games, but I want to finish this. I think, I kind of need to finish it. So, come hell or high water, we're going to do that. So at about 57:21 here, I'm going to end the recording. Thank you guys for watching. Take your vitamin D, drink some water, and as always, peace out.